Mark Gordon. It's April 4th, 2025. And I'm in Florida, and Mark is in Ventura, California. Mark, how are you?
Doing good. I'm doing good. We finally got some good weather here. Man, it was cold. I had a little bit of the flu and it was blowing about 25 knots of cold, damp air, which is not what the
Hmm.
doctor ordered, but I'm feeling much better. We got sunshine today. How you
Well,
doing?
I'm glad you're healthy because you didn't sound good. I was sending out the posse to find you when I got you on the phone, and you didn't sound good.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Fauci. The gift that keeps on giving. Yeah, that was no, it wasn't that bad. I mean, I had the big C back in 2022, and that was pretty bad. That was rough. Um, but this wasn't too bad. 3 or 4 days. Not I wasn't really knocked down. It slowed me down, but I wasn't in bed or anything like that. So we're all good.
Hmm.
We're all good, JD. Everything's good. I'm back in action. And yeah. So thanks for having me on again. It's always good to talk with you.
I want to, as I said to you on the phone, we've talked a bunch of times on the phone, but what I want to talk about was on January 17th this year, I turned 36 years sober. So I swore I'd like do some kind of like a broadcast and talk about it. And, we're getting around to do it now. It's April 4th, so it's no big deal. So 36 years.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Way more than half your life has been sober.
Yeah, but why I want to do with you is because in many ways, even though you're not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous or you're not really a sober guy, you're one of those normie guys, which you still have fun, but you're not you weren't addicted, you weren't controlled, and you didn't have to go to you didn't hit a rock bottom like I did. So, but in many ways, what you did was in the last years that we've been friends, helped me with a lot of different solutions and concoctions and great conversations and fantastic friendship. You know what I mean? So very encouraging. Um,
I'm
and
glad someone listens to me.
well, yeah, I listened to half of it. Well, no, what I was saying to you yesterday on my coffee, I posted up on coffee, the coffee is kind of an important thing every day. And I didn't really take it, owning insomnia and doing all that stuff. We drank coffee. It was just, coffee. But I wish I would have known what I know now when I had insomnia, because Erewhon and the rest of those stores do these fantastic blends with lion's mane and reishi and chaga. And there's some fantastic properties that the Chinese gave us that the mushrooms are really great, and they go in my coffee every morning. And I think it's just the way I describe my system right now is if I were standing against a glass door and you threw a tennis ball at me, that's about how powerful it is right now, my immune system.
And I just thought of something, John. I remember you came to town and I took you to Erewhon over there in by Beverly and in what was it, Beverly and no, Fairfax, right?
Oh
Over
yeah.
there, PBS Studios. And you, I think you were new to that whole world. And you were in there. We went to the tonic bar, and I think I ordered you a couple tonics just to get you kind of into it. And standing in back of us was Jamie Foxx and Lenny Kravitz. Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're like, what is this place? This is crazy here. It was a real scene. And I think that was your first introduction to those kind of things, right? Those elixirs.
Well, okay,
Very
so
early on.
there was a place called Bo Chaos. It was in Beverly Hills. And when I had insomnia, when I had the coffee shop Insomnia, I used to go there with Frank Leone from Loja. And I was sober, but Frank wanted to open a restaurant and a bar. And so we were going out to check out all these different hot spots. And Bo Chaos was this super cool spot run by the guys who used to run Flaming Colossus. And they were like kind of like the French version of me, party throwers. They threw great parties. So they had this. I was really envious, but I wanted to really learn what they were doing. So they had this fantastic place called Bo Chaos. It was this kind of tragically European hip place that played this music that I still listen to today. It was like, something you used to listen to on KCRW. But it was like trip hop music. And then you had all these Euro girls sitting around smoking cigarettes and And it was like this great scene on going the weekends. It was packed and people were eating food and bar food. And it was just really cool, right? A very European thing. But in the one part of the restaurant, they had a thing called an elixir bar. And there was this guy that it was called Dave. I drank this thing called Dave's Brew. And Dave's Brew was a bunch of different things in it, but it had deer antler and really like wild things I'd never experienced before. Now, remember, I'm
Yeah,
probably,
deer antler's the real deal. Yeah.
oh, yeah, I remember like I was maybe 10 years sober. Enough sober, everything was out of my system. So drinking one of those like tonics or elixirs, I remember sitting at the table and I can remember like feeling my cheeks getting warm and kind of getting a goofy smile. And that's when I realized that stuff is real, you know, and it didn't affect me in a negative way, but it was one of those things where I was definitely got my attention. And when you and I went to Erewhon, I saw what they did where they, you know, they formulated. I mean, I always joke around that when I make my cup of coffee with the Rishi Chaga lion's mane and cacao with the coffee that I drink in a press pot, that probably if you were to be at Erewhon, if you calculated that up to about what that would cost, that'd be like a $50 cup of coffee.
Oh yeah, no, they those add up quick over there. There's so many YouTubes and Instagrams now about how she Erewhon is. It's the most expensive grocery
Oh,
store,
but
and
you know,
people
listen to
joke
their
about
credit. I mean, their credit, they were way ahead of the trend on some of I like that what they did there. I mean, you know, and all these expensive. I mean, you got the celeb crowd going there, so why not? So that's why I wish I would have had that at Insomnia. Because can you imagine? I would have been like, you know, Elixir Bar there, and you know, just it was kind of before that whole thing. I discovered that, but um, yeah, no, sober. All these years, it's just weird to think about. You know, you
Well,
do.
I think the trend has been less alcohol, more herbs, hasn't it been for a while?
I,
Like,
you know, what I've noticed is, well, you know, what I used to do, cocaine and vodka. That to me is it's the way things. If you really look at like the landscape of drugs and addiction right now, it's still bad. Whatever you know, whatever gets you going. It could be a bag of chips or you know, sex or gambling or whatever. I chose vodka and it brought me to my knees. So, but watching everybody, I remember going to a meeting once out here in Florida. There was a guy leading the meeting, and it was this place called Oasis, and you know, it's a cool place. It's great. It helps a lot of people. But I kind of was like, it was super. I was the oldest guy, like probably the oldest guy in there. Probably had the most sobriety, and everyone was really young. And it was cool because okay, you got to really see what was happening in today's society, right? So Ronnie gets up there, and he first thing he does, he says, "Okay, raise your hand if you've OD'd before." And I was like, look around, everyone raises their hand. And I'm like, wow, okay. Then he does it again. He goes, okay, raise your hand if you've OD'd more than once. Everybody raises their hand. I'm like, you know, that's like almost dying the way I look at it. I never really, I mean,
did you ever OD, John?
uh-uh.
Ever come close? Like, oh, I didn't. Yeah.
I got drunk. I mean, I got drunk where you know, I fell down one night. I was drinking with Tanya Tucker some vodka, or no, some champagne during the dynasty party at the old Cattle Barons, and it was a private party. And she came over and she kept bringing bottles of Moët Chandon, like you know. And I really drink a lot of champagne. And I remember like going out the door for some reason to get some air, and I fell down on the sidewalk, and I was like on my back like a turtle, and I couldn't get up. Now, can you imagine? The tail of the pup is across the street, and I'm on my back like there was like this bum and little cutout and I said, "Hey, buddy, I'll give you $5 if you like help me up."
Oh my God.
He helped he helped me up. So
Was that a low
I,
spot?
yeah, I got home that night, but you know, I did a Lowell George. I ended up taking a you know a gram of cocaine and cut into two lines and that's how I got home. Which is like the insanity of that was just insane. I don't know. I mean, I look back on the nightclubs and running a lot of that stuff. I mean, do I think I could have done better? Absolutely. Could I have made better decisions? 100%. But it was just a fantastic like moment in time. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I have to, you know, this is what keeps me sane today. All the money, all the time, I think the time is what, you know, I mean, you knew me uh you're one of the few people that knew me when I was really deep into it. You know what I mean? But I don't know if you really knew how deep because you really didn't hang out with. There was always a small crew that I would go with, and there was Lee Selwyn, he's passed away, and Woody, he's gone. A lot of those guys are gone. You know what I mean? It's just sort of.
Yeah, yeah, you were tapping into a different energy for sure. We would rendezvous once in a while, and I gotta say that it was kind of iffy. If hey, yeah, we're gonna go out tonight. I'll pick you up at 9. It was like, okay, there's a 50-50. You're gonna be there at 9. You know what I mean? I knew through your sketchy times for sure, but
It's also like
I never really
running.
saw you as somebody who was really having a big problem. I thought that hey, the guy's running clubs. He's got a million balls in the air, and he has to be part of the party scene. And I don't know. I mean, in your 20s, I mean, is this kind of lifestyle just a rite of passage? I went through my period where I was drinking maybe 3, 4 nights a week and occasionally doing some drugs. I don't think I ever got addicted, but I would show up to work with hangovers sometimes twice a week, and it was kind of affecting me professionally. Um, just thank God when I got to be about 27, 28, it started to get boring. It just wasn't fun anymore. You'd be in those
You were lucky.
clubs. It got to be annoying the drunk people and the loud music and yeah, I mean I just had to move on from it.
Well, you got out of the chair before you got a haircut. My greatest expression these days is you sit in the barber chair long enough, you're going to get a haircut, and I got a good one. You know what I mean? So I wrote it out. I had fun. I think I was a victim of my circumstances and my work. I think it was fantastic. One of the first people that ever gave me cocaine was Goldie Hawn at Tiffany's private club. I mean, and I was under a 21 DJing in Encino, and there was Dan Haggerty and Goldie Hawn, and there was this giant mound of blow on this table with all these silly straws. And how bad can it be? You know what I mean? And that was the first time I did it, and
Well,
it was pretty wild. I mean, after that, it was just kind of, if you keep doing it, I believe no matter who you are, it's going to break you down, and it broke me
you
down.
were out by 30. You were done by 30.
30, you know.
So that's pretty good. You got out. You got out.
But I thought I was like late to
I
the
mean,
party.
we all know names. We're not going to mention them, but there's people our age in their 60s still trying to play the game.
I don't know how
They
to do
never
it.
they never got out. A lot of those people, like you said, are not here anymore, but there are some people that are still thinking, they're on Sugar Mountain, to quote Neil Young, but it's 30, 35 years past that prime.
Well, think of one of the greatest stories. I don't know if I've shared this with you. I might have, but David Lewis. David Lewis was a dear friend of all of ours. He's my first friend in kindergarten.
Love David. Love David.
He passed away. But at like 50 some odd years old, over 15 years ago, 16 years ago, he called me and said, "Hey, I want to stop drinking." And I laughed because, David's been drinking his whole life. You know what I mean? That was his life on the boat. That was his,
Leave the boater, which is an excuse to drink. Yeah.
right. So, I mean, and David, I always knew he was like a very funny drunk too. He wasn't the angry. So he was entertaining, like super
Oh yeah.
entertaining. But obviously that's going to have a toll on your body, which I think he found out later through his doctor that was what was happening. But sometimes it doesn't matter. Your family and your doctor, your kids. I mean, people will do whatever it takes to keep that going, right? So I'll never forget this. David suffered from he had cancer of the lungs, and then he had it spread to his brain. And
Yeah.
he went through like several different brain surgeries to alleviate the pressure and whatever. And then
Have two brain surgeries. Yeah.
yep, and then he decided that at that point that he was going to not have any more surgeries, and he was going to go to hospice. So more or less he was giving up, and that was it. He was going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. He
So,
threw him.
well, we were talking to him. One of the most interesting conversations, he called me one day and he says, "John," because there's a lot of parts, where I was very proud of David because David did stay sober. He did stay. It was really interesting.
It's a miracle. It really
Yeah,
was a
he stopped
miracle.
drinking. I think it was 10 years. I'm almost just shy of 10 years. And, I remember his sobriety was a lot different than mine. So mine was abstinence of everything. So I got rid of the whole deal. I mean, drinking, smoking pot, anything that was really that, from the neck up, that I had to get away from all of it. I was scared, because I'll share with what happened to me in the end here. But with David, he hit me by surprise with this one question, or what he said to me. He said, John, he goes, I'm dying. And I just had this thought where I want to drink. I think I want to drink. And it was a great call because it was like, he made the call rather than just drinking, right? So, and I sat back in my chair and I really was like, wow, you try to put yourself in that place of, David, he knows when his time is up, right? It's going to happen soon. We know, we don't know our time is up, right? So I wanted to be as sensitive as I could, but also I wanted to give him good information. So the only thing I could think of was, all this time he had that monkey on his back and he put it into check, and he fought the devil, and he won at this moment, right? So I said to him, I said, David, if you want to go out of this life a winner, knowing that you beat down this thing that controlled your whole life, or you want to leave with knowing that it beat you again.
Yeah.
He
And
thanked me.
so he chose not to drink
But
at the
I believe so. I will never. I mean, I want to believe that. I think so. I think the his tone, his voice was positive, and he heard something that resonated with him, which was, and I never forgot that because it was it was different. I'd never had that experience before. You know what I mean? So, but at the same time, you're looking into the end, which is something we'll see. Hopefully not sooner than later, but
well,
but
does alcohol relieve the pain, the psychological pain? Maybe he's looking for that. Um,
it's
I
been.
never found alcohol to be that good at that because you always pay the price with headaches and feeling like crap the next day. And there's a certain depression after you're high too that I didn't like.
Well,
You know,
David smoked weed the whole time he was sober. But what made him different was interesting because traditionalist AAs were really much, like, well, at the meetings he caught a lot of slack. He would get, I don't know if he spoke to you about that, but he more or less, he did a lot of shit about that. But I believe that my understanding of it was, if you drink for that long, and I know this for a fact, your body changes. Your chemical, your whole balance changes. You see people in rooms where they talk about spirituality and this calmness and this serenity. They don't have it. They can't have it. It's just it's the body doesn't allow them. And then unless you take some lithium or something the doctor prescribes to you. So I believed in my heart that David smoking weed was the way he could stay like this. And God bless him for that, because he was going to meetings. He was doing more than what normal people in AA do. He'd go to meetings, he'd sponsor guys, he'd move chairs around, he was of service, he'd shake hands, call people up, run people to meetings. He was a full guy of service, that is the sort of poster boy of AA, right?
yeah.
So I mean, in many ways, I gave him a lot of credit that he was able to beat down alcohol, because I think alcohol is maybe I mean, that test we always talk about as far as mortality or risk factors. There's a European test that talks about, heroin, acid, LSD, cocaine, cannabis, all of it, and alcohol. The only one they didn't test was sugar. And, head and shoulders above the rest was always alcohol. Alcohol was always the worst. I mean, running your car off the road, getting into an accident, losing your job, killing somebody. In weed, you're not going to do that. You know what I mean? Weed, I felt like if you and I smoked weed, we'd be ordering dessert and hanging out at home and having some laughs or watching Blade Runner. That's what we did, I think, that one time, right? So we weren't out driving our car 100 miles an hour and being like assholes. The only times I've ever crashed my Porsche was on red wine. You know what I mean? So on Coldwater Canyon.
Yeah, no, alcohol is the most destructive substance I've ever come across. Cocaine's pretty bad too, but alcohol is really bad. And it's part of the culture, it's accepted into the culture. And for whatever reason, far less damaging substances are Schedule One, so
Right.
it's societal. Yeah, it's just such a mystery, John. I don't understand the addictive mind as far as what makes that tick. I remember I remember my daughter asked me, Dad, how would I know if I was an alcoholic, or how would I know if my friends were alcoholic? I said, well, I would say the people that can't leave the party until all the alcohol is gone are probably going to be your alcoholic friends. And she, this is when she's like 16 or 17, and she actually told me a couple years later, Dad, you're right. I have friends like that. They just once they get the drink on, they can't stop. They,
Firewater.
they got to just keep going, and they're going to the next party. I don't care if it's 3, 4 in the morning,
Sure.
and they're going for it. And yeah, I don't understand that. I don't know if it's a spiritual hole that you're trying to fill. Is it something that is there something in your life you just can't cope with, and you have to bury it? Are you running? There's a lot of people that run, 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 run.
I'll just tell you my personal experience.
Stop. Yeah,
So I had a pretty charmed life, wouldn't you say? I mean, I pretty much put myself into a situation
great
where
family. Yeah,
great,
loving
great-
parents.
yeah, loving parents, mom and dad together, you
South
know,
of the Boulevard.
yeah, and my business decisions were pretty spot on. I mean, I ended up, attaining some pretty big social credit as far as running some of the biggest clubs in Los Angeles for 15 years. I mean, the Whiskey, the Roxy, I remember being, I was an earner for, the boys at those places. I remember standing with Mario Maglinari and smoking a cigar with him. And, you know, it was a good time, but at the time, um, there was a lot of drug use. There was a time, it was like for me, I felt like it was a lot of fun until it stopped being fun. So, I used to use it to control, it's a great book Richard Blade wrote, from K Rock Radio. In chapter 3, thanks me for his career. But what's interesting was he doesn't know, I think he knows, but Rick Carroll, who was the original program director at K Rock, I'd walk in with a little baggie, like an 8 ball of blow, and I would, chop lines on the control table, buying my spots for La Hot Club and all my spots. So it was like that was the way I learned how to do business. It was negotiating through drugs, what I mean? Then what happens is
Currency of the time. Yeah.
right. So when they brought him back to, he was at KNC, and they brought him back and renamed him. His name is Dick Shepard, but they renamed him Richard Blade. And, that was a
Oh,
great,
that's where you got the blade, huh?
the Blade. So, yeah, no, that was a great time. So those are great opportunities. I remember Lou Adler telling me on the sit in the back of his Lagonda with Jack Nicholson, in the passenger seat, and they took me to this club. I remember him saying to me, "Is there anything you let me know if you need anything?" You know what I mean? It made them a lot of money. I did really well with them. So I don't know what it was. I don't know what I think it was sabotaging myself for whatever reason. Um, I've looked back on that. I've come to terms, obviously, because it was definitely a time killer. And I'm lucky I lived through it. I always believed that alcohol wasn't going to be, and drugs wasn't going to be the killer for me. It was going to be the circumstances I was in. And sure enough, there were some pretty wild things that happened along the way. Um, and we're lucky that we're alive, So
I
I look at
think
it,
they want to talk about that because you went through some heavy stuff.
well, there was a club called Voila.
Yeah.
Um, we opened the club on Sunday nights, and it was booming. It was in the Beverly Center, right next around the corner from Tramps, and Hard Rock was in there. It was on Beverly and La Cienega. And
Sunday nights is just an off night usually, right? And you were
Sunday,
packed.
well, so we did
Packed.
Sunday, and then Monday was La Hot Club. So I'm trying to remember if La Hot Club was after that. I think La Hot Club came after that. But there was an altercation, and there was a man that took a swing at my Joel, my partner, and they let him in the club anyway. The club superseded our authority not to let him in because he was a member of this private club. So, and he was this
What kind of a guy was this guy?
Tunisian. He turned out to be Tunisian, and when I confront him inside the club with Dion and Dale,
Big guy? Big guy?
not really. He just kind of like, he had when I was looking at him in the club, when I found him and I asked him, I said, "Hey, I was in the back with Jimmy Buss and all the guys partying, and I came out with Dion and those guys and looked for the guy, and I found him. I said, you should really leave because
Was
before,
Dion a bouncer there, or just
no,
a
he was
friend?
a friend, but a badass. He was always willing to help and like a good friend. And I knew he could like watch my back if there was going to be problems. So that was, again, these are parts of life, I believe. And I try to tell my son, those are instinctive type of things you do, right? So always covered myself, you know what I mean, with the right people. Anyway, so we go to this guy, man. He's got these black eyes, like like shark black eyes. And I'm telling him, he just kind of nods like this. So he walks the front door and he gets to the foyer, and there's double doors here and a double doors here, and there's two desks on each side. So there's shouting going on, and
Just with the one guy.
yeah. And then I say something to him, and he takes a swing at me. And Mike Scrima, who's not with us anymore either, grabs him, and they fall back to the table. And then while they're falling back, I'm like, all the way down on the table. I'm like, this is crazy now, right? So this is now escalated into a full blown fight. So they stand him up, and Mark, I'm not kidding you, it was like a cartoon. Dion round kicks him out the door, and he flies like 15 feet through the air and lands on the ground. And then Joel walks up to him and goes,
A kickboxer, right? Wasn't
"No,
Dion?
he's a full, like I think Taekwondo, like whatever. Those guys are scary." But yeah, no, they worked the guy over pretty good. Then Joel like paid him back for the hit when he hit Joel. I'm like, oh shit. So then through the door, Billy Ranger, who was not with us anymore either, he warned me, and he pretty much saved our lives. He
He was
said,
one of the bouncers.
no, he was the maitre d'. He came from Chamois, and he
Oh,
was a really handsome guy, super sweet guy. He was like a good friend. He would always party with us, and just the nicest guy, right? So he said, John, get your guys out of here. This guy's a bad dude. He's going to come back with a gun, and he's going to try and kill you. I'm like,
whoa.
okay. So I get
He knew this guy.
yeah. So I get my 911. I get everybody out of there. Get Skip out of there. I get Joel out of there. I finally get Joel, get the fuck out of here. So we all leave. So I guess guy did come back, and he followed Billy, and he followed Spark, and they were going up the doorman. They were going up to Joel's house. He lived at the top of Kings Road up in Hollywood, and pulled over Mark, and Mark had this convertible Fiat. So I guess the story goes they were beating on Mark with this 357, and he was holding his head, and he's bloody because his rings were flat from being beaten so bad. And then Billy comes down the street because he was ahead of them and sees what's happening, and and they shoot Billy twice in the head, boom, boom, and then they shoot Spark like right in the chest, and it creases off his head. And he's so bloody that, and this is the phone call I get. I'm literally in my house, living in Van Nuys, and
But
Mike's
Bill's dead.
Billy's dead. Joel's crying on the phone. He's like, John, all it's crazy. This is
That
nuts.
Joel witnessed this whole thing?
No, Joel's house was literally a quarter mile up the street. They were going up to Joel's house, which is top of Kings Road. So had they gone up to Joel's house, Joel would have had, obviously had an answer for this guy, and probably would have killed him, but they never made it. So those guys weren't
Full
carrying.
on gangsters.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, this guy was connected. So needless to say, Billy dies, who's the one that saved my life. And I love Billy for that. And then there was Mark, who went to the hospital, and he was under protective custody at Cedars. And he ended up, my understanding is he married his nurse that brought him back to life. And then I had to go later on. So as this is sort of, as it's unfolding, um, we're still very visible. Our names
They
on
were
the
coming after you, John.
Oh yeah, my name's on the Roxy. I'm at La Hot Club. I'm at the
Those guys
Whiskey.
wanted to kill you.
I want to kill me and Joel.
Wow.
So I tell my mom and dad,
How old were you at this point?
it's probably my 20s for
Like,
sure.
but were you close? Did this get you sober? Was it one of the things that the events that said, "Hey, I better take a look at my life here.
We'll
This is
tell you.
a
Well,
little crazy."
I'll tell you how this goes. So yes and no. So what happens is we go. Everyone's carrying guns now. Perko's carrying a gun. We're all carrying guns, and basically I'm running max 151. I never forget this one guy. He's sort of connected. He goes, "Aren't you scared that this guy's going to come looking for you?" And I looked at him. I go, "Hey man, I hope he comes looking for me because I'm going to put a bullet right between his ears, right?" So if you know him, and tell him where I am. Come, I'll come. But he left. He left. Turns out he went to Vegas. I forget where else he went, but he ended up going to France. So everything was very tense, and it was hard. And
You were watching your back for months,
I turned
huh?
back. Yeah. So, so couple years later, I get a phone call from the sheriff's department in West Hollywood, and they said that they had they wanted me to come in to point out some mugshots because they think they had found the guy that killed Billy Ranger and assaulted Mark, right? So I'm like, okay. So I go down there and I pick the guy up right away. I go, that's the guy, Dominic. His name was Dominic. So I was like, okay. So I
You
said,
recognize the guy right off the bat in the mugshots.
no way. I knew her. I mean, I would never forget his face. I mean,
Wow.
so
Wow.
so they said to me something I wasn't ready for. They said, well, um, they caught him in France. And the way the extradition law is, you get tried for a crime in France. For a crime in the US, the French government tries you for it. They won't extradite back to the US, but we will fly you to France to put this guy away in jail. Like,
Wow.
okay, so now, okay, so I'll give you a perspective of the time period now. So this is 1989. I got sober January 17th. I think it was probably getting ready to turn 1 year sober. And I remember like it was scary. I was
And this
going
is how many years after the killing?
a couple years after the killing,
Oh, so this event was influential in your sobriety.
a little bit. It all comes together. It's sort of a culmination of what brought me to my knees and what my spiritual awakening was. You know what I mean? I'll get to that. But on this story, let me just end this story. So I get sober and I'll go back to that. But in this plane, I'm in the plane now and I land there and I have a French guard. Turns out this guy's like a low-level soldier and he's connected down. He's got a lot of family and they don't want me to testify. And, I got a guard on my door. It's just like, again, it's that I have my big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember like it was rainy kind of December. I
Wait, who
have
didn't want you to testify?
this guy. He was family. If I testify, I'd put him in jail, right? So I witnessed him as being the one that no one saw him shoot these guys, but my testimony would imply that he was the guy, and and Billy told me that he would come back, right? So my testimony was important. Joel was there too, and a few other people, and so I had to
But
go.
the only eyewitness was
Mark,
Spark.
he didn't want to go.
Wow, it'd be a tough conviction here without an eyewitness
Oh no,
testimony.
yeah, no, they it was his gun, and I forget the person he was with. I think told on him, and they squeezed
Okay.
the combination of all of us together, put him away for a long time. He's out now, but I mean, so I'm in my room reading Our Southern Friend from the Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous. And to tell you the truth, I didn't remember what it was, but I remember crying my heart out in that room. I left so much baggage in that room. When I was done, I left. I got it in front. They have the trial at a place called Palais de Justice, which is amazing courthouse building with these like just huge, right? It was cold and I was walking on the Champs-Elysees to the courthouse and it's almost surreal, Mark. And so
You have a bodyguard? Is there a bodyguard
I was
on?
I had like a French policeman following me. So I get there and I was like smoking cigars then. I'd stopped off in London. I grabbed like a thing of Romeo Julietta's. It was like this like the candy store for me. That was the only highlight. So we go there and so then I do my thing. We have an interpreter. They tried to mitigate. They tried to, rebuff my testimony. I was pretty like actually kind of aggressive, saying, no, this is the scumbag that shot my friend. That's what I said. And they said, sir, do not use that language. I'm like, well, that describes who he is. He's a coward.
What did the guy look like when you said that?
He was looking at me. So I mean, then I like it was time to leave. So I got the fuck out of there. Joel like ended up staying on vacation, but I got out of there I'm being in the plane and I'm flying in this plane back to the US and laying across the seats and the flight and I guess the pilot um comes on, it's like attention passengers, we're flying in altitude of we'll be arriving in Los Angeles LAX and oh, and by the way, are there any friends of Bill W on this plane? And now, people that don't know this, Bill W is like the secret code for when somebody's sober when they reach out when they're having a problem. That's like a it's
Wow.
like it's like a universal thing. It's like, you're somewhere and you reach out and
So somebody on the plane needed a drink. And they needed somebody to talk him down.
someone had a situation going on. So a mental kind of like little thing going on. And I'm laying across the seat and I looked at the flight attendant. I said, did
It wasn't the pilot.
I said to the pilot, I go, hey, did he say a friend of Bill Wilson's? She goes, why, yes, he did. Are you a friend of Bill Wilson's? This is like another like a weird, surreal kind of moment. I go, I am. Now, I was the only one on the fucking plane who was a friend of Bill Wilson, Mark. How is that possible? So I ended up going, I thought it was pretty wild. So I go to the back of the plane, sit down, and this woman. It turns out she went to a family reunion. Found out the father had a whole other family she didn't even tell her about. She'd been sober like umpteen years, but felt like she's a little shaky. And she wanted to drink, and she wanted, she did what she had been taught to do is reach out and to talk to somebody. And to tell you the truth, her talking for the next 5-6 hours was the greatest thing ever for just kind of relaxing. And my problems seemed very like they started to shrink down a little bit. And that's kind of like the greatest part. That's what recovery is kind of about. And it was interesting. And I left that flight and you know, I stayed in the club business and it didn't really get me sober. What got me sober was a series of events. One was I completely exhausted all the money I made, all the connections I made, all the was like it just my everything like my personality just I beat myself down to a place where I couldn't even like understand who I was after all that greatness and after all that fun stuff with all those clubs and DJing and contacts and people and opportunities. This little drug sucked the life out of me. And to me, I looked, I was like, what the fuck, man? I gotta get out of this thing. I tried from 1986, but something happened in 1989. And on the way to 1989, I remember being like in my Billy was over, Woody was over, Dilbert was over, a few people were over, maybe Ray Hughes was over too, and some girls or whatever. We were doing blow. And it was just a regular night. I lived in that townhouse in Studio City, Studio Village. And to tell you the truth, I had nobody really at that time looking for me. It was like, kind of like, but when everybody left, I had this like, I hear this noise downstairs. And immediately, like, I go into like cocaine super hearing mode, right? So I'm like, uh-oh. So, and I had this landing downstairs, and like the stairs went up. I don't know if you remember that place, but it was a landing, and the stairs went up, and there was another landing, and there was my door. So the door was closed. So I hear the squeak in the landing. I'm like, okay. Go into paranoid like that. I'm like, wow. So at the time on the weapons front, I had an 870 riot shotgun with a pistol grip, and I locked and loaded. And I've got a solid lead Renicky bullet backed up with all this other crazy stuff behind it, like thinking that. And here's the moment. I hear the stairs. I hear those stairs creaking, and I hear the like last landing. I'm like, okay, and my hands are shaking, my hands are sweaty, and I'm pointing at the door, and I see the doorknob turning. I'm like, fuck, man, this is gonna happen right now. Here we go. For whatever reason, I put the gun down. I open the door, and there's nobody there. And
Oh,
I was like, wow, okay. I wasn't ready to cross that line of insanity. You know what I mean?
oh, you saw the door handle turn too. Oh
Saw
boy.
the door on chair. Yeah, no. That was like, I mean, listen, Eddie Van Halen, there's great stories. Police officers talk about Eddie Van Halen reporting to the police that he saw people in the trees. I mean, this is all part of the psychosis of what happens with cocaine. If you do enough of it, you're going to start seeing whatever the fuck you want to see. You know what I mean? It's just,
Break on through to the other side. Yeah.
yeah, it's nuts. So yeah, no, at that moment, I knew I had a real problem, and I was lucky. I got on my hands and knees on January 17th. I wandered into Studio 12 and I asked God to really take away the obsession of alcohol and drugs, and He did. It was like the craziest thing ever. I was like absolved of all of like of all, every the driver that drove me for that 15 years or however long I was doing it stopped, and I was still doing clubs, but I was there and I had like a cup of water or I'd have a Coke and I was perfectly comfortable with it. And people would be still handing me like, folds or vials, or whatever. And I'd literally just kind of hand it back or I'd pass it off to somebody else. I had no desire to do it. I sort of reached this amazing moment that I think a lot of people want. I've never had a feeling at any moment in my life, the last 36 years plus, that I wanted to get loaded. And I've been through a lot of stuff. I mean, you've been party of like, seeing me move to 3 different countries. I mean, and my dad passing away, all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, so
You asked God to intervene and take away the obsession
you
or the
listen,
obsessive spirit that was in you, and he answered. I've heard this so many times. Like when you get to that point, that humbling point where you actually really with all your heart asked for your salvation from it,
I
God,
couldn't,
God will answer that. It's crazy. I know.
I couldn't put one foot in front of the other. It was the most amazing thing ever. So I was dating a girl, who was the sweetest girl, Rosie, and her best friend's grandfather owned Santa Monica Volkswagen. This is during the Gulf War. And so I wanted to go, I had to start over. I'm going to sell cars. I've been running nightclubs, I'm going to sell cars. But I figured
Yeah, yeah. I remember you selling
I'm gonna
cars.
like do something different. I'm gonna try it, rebuild my life or whatever, and just path. So I go there and I'm driving like this Mercedes and old Mercedes. I get there and so I'm last on the list every time. I'm not making any money. It's just the hardest thing in the world. Selling cars is like the hardest thing in the world to do. So Bill Rinker or Teddy, the desk manager, said, "Hey, listen, we're going to send you this Green Pea camp, and you're going to go listen to speaker Brian Tracy, who's like a famous speaker for motivation. He's like, am I putting you to sleep?"
No, no, no.
So Brian Tracy gets up there and he's talking about, this or that. And the one thing he says out of all the things he says, there's literally the whole room is like thousands of people that are listening to this guy. He was a pretty amazing speaker. And he said, you can't sell anything to anybody if you don't love yourself. You can't sell nothing. And I'm like, you're right. He goes, and I'm gonna teach you. I go, but I'm thinking to myself, well, how am I gonna learn to love myself? I mean, I'm gonna tell you how to love yourself. Like he's like just came out and said it, and like obviously I was like, I'm like listening. Because okay, in the morning, every day, you look yourself in the mirror into your eyes, because we don't look at ourselves in the mirror usually in our eyes, and you intently say to yourself 100 times, I love myself, 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 I love myself. So that first action that you get is from love. So people will feel that. I guarantee if you do it, it'll change your life. So I'm like, at this point, I'm willing to try anything, right? So I'm a humbled human that used to get up on the right side of the bed, and I get on the left. I used to tie my right shoe first, and I tie my left, right? So I will try everything to restructure and rebuild the mind, right? So openness and honesty, I will march forward. So I try this. I kid you not. The first month, I start literally selling cars and moving up the ladder like this. I would stand out in front, and all the other guys would be standing out in front. And people walk up to me, and I would sell cars like that. And the only guy that was ahead of me at the end was this guy that had been to the dealership for 20 years, and he had a bunch of B backs or whatever that they would, you can't beat those guys. So he had always people coming back that were buyers from before. And then I got into an argument with Bill Rinker, the desk manager, who never really liked me in the first place. So I learned a lesson and I was ready to go. It was interesting. And I was there to deliver a car on my day off, and I was wearing shorts and and I worked with these people for 8 hours selling this like Volkswagen, right? So, and they loved me. They were like, thought I was, hey, John, thanks for coming your day off. They didn't care I was wearing shorts. He goes, you're not supposed to wear shorts. Paulie's going to take over this deal and you're going to split it with Paulie. I'm going to say, Bill, I'm not splitting this deal with Paulie. And he goes, no, you listen to me. I'm like, Bill, I worked 8 hours on this deal. I'm not going to split it. He goes, I go, Bill? He goes, yes. And go, fuck you. I must have said fuck you 100 times on my way spinning out the door. And then shortly thereafter, I got together with Mike Paulson, and I had this idea to do this coffee shop. And he said he was in, and we started Insomnia, and that was it, man. It was off the jet. The jet started taking off again. So yeah, I realized I could do it. I realized it's amazing how the brain, I think what I took from this and what I still take from this today, and what I want to talk to you about is this right here is so important. I mean, it really limits us and it gives us so much ability to do what we need to do. I mean, and program myself to love myself in what I've come to realize in addiction and recovery if you don't love yourself, it doesn't matter what story I can tell somebody, because I have great stories. I could tell you the greatest stories in the world. Celebrities, you want to hear about celebrities? You want to hear about these people? I have got good ones, right? I've got good sobriety. I've done this. I've been a good boy. I've worked the steps, but none of that matters. It's like if you're not ready, if your ears aren't open, or if you just, it's like a waste of time. You know what I mean? And we had good friends that we'd work with. How many times, that were suffering, that some listened and some are not with us anymore. You know what I mean? It's tough. But recently, which is really interesting, is the psychedelics. I'm a big believer in psychedelics. I mean, I won't take psychedelics because it's not necessarily this moment in my life for me, and I don't need it. But watching Rick Perry, the former governor of Texas, with Joe Rogan talking about ibogaine having an 85% chance, 85% recovery rate for opiates, PTSD, and depression, that's a game changer. So at 30, or even like sooner, look, I can't back up and say things I wish I could have done it sooner. I wish I did. That was my only regret. But how many people this would save? Think about that. Years of your life. So you could try something and do it if you're open. I mean, whether you're open or not, it's going to switch you. It's going to take you to a different level, right? So, I mean, the brain, it's a reset of the brain.
Yeah, I don't understand it. As I'm a, I'm a, I'm part of a church where we actually have the legal clearance to do psychedelic medicines. We call it a holy sacrament, really. So I have a lot of experience with it's called Santo Daime, which is like ayahuasca.
Uh-huh.
If you were to ask me, why is it so important for people with addiction? I would only have to say, with the way my mind is wired, is that it opens up this whole part of your consciousness that lets just this divine beauty shower you, this divine love, if you will, and this, you start to see into higher dimensions, and you realize that it's just, this particular world here is just part of, you just one of the planes of existence, and there's much, higher fields out there that you can access. And yeah, and you get a lot of what they call mirasaos, which are, it's almost like this divine knowledge is being downloaded into you, so you get a lot of perspective on your life. I know that you have a great success story, John. You had a neighbor who had a son who was having some addiction problems, and you let him know about a place called, was it Rhythmia, down in
I
Costa
think in
Rica,
Costa
right?
Rica. But this was my good friend I play golf with every Sunday. And they spent $400,000 on rehab. He walked out of four different ones. I mean, so finally I was like, look, and he's a works for a Fortune 500 company, super structured architect and tough guy to get through to. But at this moment, he would try anything. You know what I mean? So, and Kevin and his son was up to trying anything too. So it was amazing that that he put together this deal. And he also spoke to, there was a golfer that's over there. I forget his name. So he confirmed it too. So they went, and he had this amazing experience. He did the week-long session, and he said the
It's
sun
like three or four times, right?
it came off him, and the whole, like, it changed his life. Like my buddy said he came back, he didn't even recognize his son. Now the son ended up parting again, but I think what had happened was there was a moment, or where something climbed back into his brain to realize that maybe, what, there's something more to this than me getting myself high and trying. He died in his father's arms a couple times, and Narcan and the paramedics brought him back. I mean, can you imagine?
Hmm.
So, but right now, as of right now, what's amazing is he's got a baby and a new wife, and he's doing amazing. He's been sober like a long time. So
And
even
does
then,
it attribute that to the ayahuasca
I think
session?
it's a culmination of everything. I believe, with ayahuasca, since I haven't done it, the only thing I can really sort of like, if I were to compare what my experience was, you have Alcoholics Anonymous versus ayahuasca, right? So Bill Wilson, I didn't realize was in 1950s, they did he was it Bill Wilson or Dr. Bob? One of those guys had debilitating depression and they gave him LSD. And it was only the reason why the alcoholics books, the AA book is even existence because he couldn't even get out of bed. It was like, it really like changed him like that. He was so excited about it. He wanted to put LSD in the Alcoholics Anonymous book. I'm like, what? I'm like, blowing my mind. I'm like, everything you're taught. Like, because again, it's I get what IA is. Very structured. You have to have structure because you are coming from no structure. But going back to what I was saying with ayahuasca, so I'm powerless over alcohol and drugs, and my life's unmanageable. I've come to believe in a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. I made a decision to turn my life over to the will of God as I understand you, God, right? So those three steps, ready for step four. Now, step four is for me to sit down and write a thorough inventory of all the fuckers that I like ripped off or stole from, or girls I cheated on, or they cheated on me, or people stole from me, or whatever the story was. I have to write it all down. Now, I believe that's a flawed. I believe that's a super flawed, and that's like an endless thing to do because as your brain, I don't remember a lot of stuff. I mean, it's like but it may be in my back of my things here, controlling, and I'm almost 100% positive. Whatever I do is like something back here in the recesses of my mind is controlling a reactionary thing, right? So I believe in ayahuasca. What it does is the purge bucket, and what's happening is your intention is that's step four. It's going deep, deep down. And correct me if I'm wrong. So if you're going down to really figure out what your things are that you've done, I think you did this once too. You're faced with all those things, and those are not pleasant moments, and you're now going to eradicate them from your life. And Mother Plant, as you explained to me, that's I believe I look at it as that's the way I equivalate the two together. It's kind of like this is, but then going back to Dr. Bob, he's quoted as saying in 1958 or 55, this is before I was born, he said, there'll be some people that won't be able to have a spiritual awakening as a result of God and will need help. And that help was in psychedelia. It was interesting. So bring in ayahuasca, bring in ibogaine, these are things that have been around long before the pharmacists were writing prescriptions and the doctors were, claiming to know all, but they don't know anything about that. You know what I mean?
So when you take a large dose, right, of a psychedelic, and it could be ayahuasca's main component is DMT,
Mhm.
dimethyltryptamine,
Yeah.
which which your pineal gland in your brain will produce it upon death, at birth, and in high stress situations. And
But the
it's
fluoride, the fluoride in the water has been suppressing our pineal gland.
that's what they say, yeah. But they call it the God molecule. And what happened to me was that, okay, so pre having a breakthrough experience, I was operating only as Mark Gordon, right? As the ego mind. I was seeing it through the limited egoic mind of Mark in this body, right? And then I had a very big breakthrough experience where I felt like I was just being showered with this intense love, and having just all these beautiful thoughts and visions and all that. And I remember saying to myself, I want to be that guy. I thought I was being sort of channeling this great spirit, like almost like I was channeling a Christ-like spirit.
Hmm.
And I go, I want to be that guy. I wish I could be that guy.
Right.
And a message came through and said, you are that guy. We're all that guy. That's who we are eternally.
Hmm.
What it did was it didn't it I didn't have ego death. I did in that moment, right? For that many hours, but it showed me the separation of the two. It introduced me to eternal higher self,
Yeah.
which is part of the Christ energy. And we're all that. Jesus even said it. You can do everything I did and more. That's what I believe we are. We have the egoic self, very limited, very troubled, a lot of drama, all that kind of stuff. And then we have this we have a soul, okay? And the Hindus say we have the body and the ego, and we have the soul, and then we also have the super soul. The super soul is what is immutable, it's eternal, it's perfect, it's pure bliss, and you can go to those levels in ceremonies, not all the time,
Hmm.
but I think that if there's anything that's healing, it's that when you actually know that deep down that you are a piece of that eternal perfection.
Well, it's like loving yourself, Mark.
That's that. Yeah. How could you not? And then you have the step down version, which is the soul, which is malleable. Okay, it's beautiful. That soul is beautiful also, but it is malleable, and it does attach to what they call karmas. So things that you do can affect it negatively or positively. So we're trying to purify that soul too by good action, right? Because it is eternal also, but it is malleable.
Hmm.
Okay. And then we have the egoic self, which I say is it's a great servant, but not a good master. So we can use that egoic self to navigate the world and to keep us safe. It has judgment, like we can judge things like stay away from that person. Oh, that person's good, that kind of thing. So it's just a tool. But I think with addiction, John, and I don't know much about it, is that I felt pretty darn small when I broke through, and I felt pretty darn petty as Mark Gordon, the body ego identified guy. And I got the revelation that I was much more than that. And that was beautiful. And that was very, how can you not love that? Do you know what I
Well,
mean?
let me just stop you for 1 second and give you a little, for those listening or watching and not understanding this process. As your friend, I got to see it from my perspective. So my perspective was I led this living in Malibu and having Chloe. I have this daughter, and then I have this wife who's a wake and a baker who ends up finding out that she's doing heroin and screwing the neighbor boy. And I fought to get Chloe back and had this great, I had this, I had to go leave Malibu and take Chloe and raise a daughter and then start a business. But in the meanwhile, we stay with you. Fast forward a couple of years, we stay with you, and I identify there's some stuff going on there with you where I said to you, Mark, you don't need to live like this if you don't want to. Um, I see some stuff that's a little weird. So I handed you the card, I think, for Richard Robert Smith, and that started process of unraveling a marriage, and then ultimately you raising your daughter full time. And I think there was a very hurtful time for you, for both of us. I think, how does this, when something busts up like that, first of all, how do you make the decisions like, why did you pick this person? How could they do this? How could they put this over? How could they put alcohol or drugs over the my life? So all that was going around with you. I mean, is that, in many ways, I knew that it had to, it affects anybody. I don't care who you are. It's going to, listen, I was running for me mentally. I told you this, but I lived up on Morning View above, and the, I used to run the beach in Malibu. And I'd run from Trancas to Free Zuma. I worked up to that. So it was 3 miles up and 3 miles back because I couldn't get the brain working right because that's how much it affected me. It was like I knew if I got my body in shape, I was running in the soft sand 6 miles a day. I was in the most supreme condition. And that's the only way I survived. And I moved out of Malibu. And then, but when I stayed with you and I saw that happen, it's interesting to watch the transitions where you went from next with, you know, having Riley moving to Ventura, and having the whole thing, and then watching you sort of as we were talking. I mean, I follow everything. I listen to whatever you say. There's some really great stuff from colloidal silver to the mushrooms and everything I do today and the way I make my coffee. But it is interesting. When I first heard you started doing ayahuasca, I was definitely intrigued. And I remember like one of our good friends who's sober. He was a couple of them actually. They were worried that you were doing ayahuasca, and my advice to them was, "Till Mark tells us he wants some help, I think he's doing just fine." And I think it was also the lack of understanding, and also one of them couldn't stay sober, and the one's been sober for a while, and he's crazy. So again, it's all opinion. So to me, I'm more open minded. I think if it helps you and I understand it, and my application, like I said, I see it sort of running concurrently with, you've got the first three of Alcoholics Anonymous, but that fourth one is, dude, I do a lot of writing. There's a lot of people I hurt along the way. I had to say I was sorry a lot. There's a lot of people I know that I missed out. You know what I mean? So, but ayahuasca, I mean, it digs deep. Am I right? It just goes, you get to see yes, you're close to the eternal soul, but you get to see your flaws and
Well, it's interesting. It is it gives you, one of the sayings is, it gives you what you need, not what you want. So you quickly find out what kind of what your mission is with it. Everybody's a little bit different. Some people are there to continually get help, healing from traumas. They're still working those traumas out. They're clearing their karmas. I remember one guy, he came to church, and it was his first time, and uh, after the work closed, I said, "How was your work?" He goes, "Worst night of my life." I said, "What happened?" He says, "It felt like I went down into a dungeon, and these devils were picking my skin apart with fish hooks." And I'm going, "Oh my God, you got to be kidding!" And I got real curious. I said, "Wow, I mean, what do you think that is?" And he said, "Well, I think I brought it upon myself." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I was a heroin addict.
mm,
I had done a lot of bad things. I was a thief and hurt a lot of people.
ugh,
And I I didn't really know what to say, but I said, if I can just say so, this is what's coming to me, is that maybe you can forgive yourself, just ask the Lord for forgiveness for these, and work on it." Ran into him a couple years later. He had done some more ceremonies, and he had worked out a lot of that stuff, and he was now having some blissful experiences, but he was still coming to church to work out some of these issues,
mm.
and to clear it. But yeah, everybody's a little bit different. Some are there do that heavy duty work. There's a lot of people there to do that heavy duty work. There's a lot of trauma in this world, John. We know that, right? And there are people there that are there to help, like you on that airplane with that woman who needed some counseling. You know what I mean? And
there's
a lot of the works, I'm there to help.
there's
I'm
been like there's
just
been a number there's been a number of times, Mark. You know what I mean? I'm sure for you as well. I mean, it puts you in a different orbit. You become now this you know an example. You speak so, I mean, we'll just quote one of our friends, "I speak so loudly, but by example you see me," right? So it's, by speak so loud you don't hear me, by example you see me, right? So I think um the alcohol and the drugs and all this stuff, and I've come to this understanding, in whether it's ayahuasca, subconscious like psychedelia, or if it's Brian Tracy telling me that I need to love myself, or all the different things we come across in life, which is interesting. This is the reality, I think, at this moment, I believe, is if you and I had to run a track meet, right? Let's just say we were in perfect condition. We were maybe 20, 30 years younger. We were going to run a track meet. Knees were in good shape, heart's good. We could run, run, run. We go, let's go. We wake up in the morning, we're gonna run 26. Boom, we go. You stop at like 12.2 and I stop at like 10.5. Why is that? It wasn't 26. It was 12.2 or 10.5.
Yeah, a lot of it's will. Yeah.
No, right here. It's right here. This brain shuts it off. The brain shuts it off because the body will go 100 miles. It'll go 100 miles. The body doesn't know. The brain shuts it off. It limits us to our expectations, our aspirations. It's like, there's you see it every day in propaganda media. You see it every day. Like, people are fed information. It's like my dad used to say, John, you say you're famous enough times over and over again to people, they're going to start to believe it. And that is really the sort of if you look at the product of what's happening today with the information that's being put out, it's really all about that. You really have to step back and not look at the noise. The noise is so loud. I mean, Steph went to the market today, to Costco in Florida, and there are people stockpiling for what I don't know. Do they know? They don't
There's
know.
storm coming.
What's that? No, they're stockpiling because the
Oh,
stock
maybe because of the tariffs. They
tariffs.
want to get in before the prices go up. I don't know.
Right. But are they really going to go up? They've gone down. I mean, I don't know. It's like, again, it's the noise. It's like it reminds me very much of the COVID. Like when this started coming on, it's like pretty soon people are going to be yelling at each other, right? So going back to, not to digress into politics, but um, to go back into recovery, I'm very proud of you being, you've been such a good friend of mine. We've talked, you're probably the only guy I talk to. Like, I mean, I talked to a lot of different people. I would say I talk to you every day. We were talking every day there for a while. Like, even when and what's funny is when I lived in Oxnard, we really didn't talk that much when I was over there. We did, but I think I had a coffee moment where I had like where I like blew up on coffee one day at Don Francisco. That was a big trip. Yeah, that was like the crack of coffee I drank that one time. Um, yeah, no, but it's nice because I want you to come out to Florida. I want to come out and see your place in Arizona, and I'd like to see you get out of California. As for all my California friends, I feel bad because a lot of them are there. There's a lot of great memories, but it's just it's changed. You know what I mean? And a lot of people that have left there, I speak with and I'm friends with, and they're just like, yeah, man, looking at it, when you get away and you step back for a second, you could really see what's happened. You know what I mean? And you're either comfortable with it or not. It's not for everybody to leave. For me, it was my circumstance was Steph had immigration issues, and we left. We left and went to Costa Rica. So lived in Costa Rica, had Emma, went to Canada. And then I couldn't take it for 2 years. The winters were how many phone calls you get from me saying I want to not kill myself, but I can't take the winters anymore, right? So then we're down here to Florida. So if you told me what all those years ago I'd be living in Florida, I thought you'd be crazy, right? So, and you've never been here, well, you've been here once. You were here
Yeah.
once. Yeah, that's
No,
right.
I'm halfway out of California. I actually spend more time in Arizona now, but
Yeah.
yeah, cut the ties. When I finally get my house, the roof on and everything like
So
that.
talk to me about what you're doing out there because that is intriguing to me because not everybody can understand that. I'm not sure if I understand it. So explain to me the enormity of the project and how big it is.
Well, I got 80 acres out there, sold 10 to my good friend Andy, and then a friend from church has got 60 acres right next to me. So combined, we've got 140 acres. And you know, we've built a chapel out there for the church, and we have kind of a whole kind of center with a shower house, men's and women's, two showers, two toilets each side, a rooftop deck for that, and a communal kitchen and a communal kind of gathering area, a bunkhouse that sleeps 16, and then a whole kind of camping slash RV kind of park. So it's going to be a retreat center for the church. The church is
How many
there
miles off the road is it?
we're 14 miles up an unpaved road. It's actually a county road, but it's just unpaved. And
I got to
uh,
go out there. I have to see it. I told Racer that Chris Racer, our good friend, I would love to get a helicopter and come in that way.
Yeah, it's a great drive. I mean, you actually start out in a whole different ecosystem. You come through the road and there's all these cactuses around and it's very mountainous. And then you come through this whole area where it's all boulders and it looks like a Roadrunner cartoon, right? And then you come up to Aria. We're on a place called the Sunflower Flats, and it's this big, gigantic flat area, acres and acres, and it's surrounded by mountains.
And you have a
And
water table underneath, right?
we have a whole ocean of water underneath, so we got tons of water. And it's just, yeah, it's just paradise out there. Just you can't, there's nobody around. There's hardly anything around there. It's one of the few places you can go and just listen to the trees and the wind and nature. And, you
Wow.
know, we have rattlesnakes and jackrabbits and coyotes everywhere and some bobcats.
How are the chickens doing out there?
We don't have them anymore. That was a real problem. I don't eat chickens and don't eat that many eggs, and nobody wanted to take care of the chickens, so they're at
Yeah,
the neighbor's house. But
good, good. All right.
yeah, it's been interesting because I'm not a guy that is a communal guy. You know, living in a community is a little different. You
Yeah,
have to learn how to share. You have to learn how to um, be forgiving of other people's personalities.
you sort of evolved into this. You're kind of like the that guy now, like you said.
What's that guy?
That guy is where you're more forgiving, you're a little more, I'm sure obviously you want your privacy, but I don't know. I have a lot of curiosity. I want to come out and see it because Steph and I always talk about like, what the hell's Mark doing out there? Because you don't really shoot a lot of pictures. I personally think you need to be doing a lot of video and like videotaping the progress from the road to building the first house. That's just me. I wish I would have come out there.
I'm taking a lot of pictures. Yeah,
Okay, good.
I'll do a page and all that. But
Good.
you know, when you're in the middle of it and it's 110 degrees out and you're swinging hammers, the last thing you want to do is to remember it, I
I think
guess.
it's great. You're building it yourself and you're
Yeah,
doing.
we've got a limited crew and it's been great. You know, it just you know what it really feels like, John. Okay, you know, I'm getting up there in years, we all are, and it's all about the future, really. It's all about giving back and sharing. I'm just trying to set it up in a way where it goes in itself, you know, it itself kind of governs itself without me being too involved in it because I want it to live on in perpetuity.
Yeah.
You know, and it's in a trust that's a 350-year trust. So, you know, maybe we can get it to a point where you know, like this country, you know, we had the Constitution, which is sort of the blueprint of how the place is supposed to be run, and it's not perfect, but it was a good start. So yeah, and it's just, you know, to be able to have people to come out there and to reconnect with nature and to if they want to do some church works out there and experience the plant Holy Sacrament in a natural setting
Uh-huh.
and get back in the car afterwards, you know, and drive home, which is really hard.
Well,
Uh,
I
do
personally,
extended works.
well, this is the way I see it because I'd like try to put it into. I would rather send my friends or people that I just there's a lot of people out there that need a lot of help. There's a lot of people that don't understand the psychedelics that are really intrigued by it. There's more information. I've sent links to a lot of different people. So going to Costa Rica is difficult. Leaving the country. I personally have many times teed you up as saying, well, I've got this buddy in California. I was like, you know, but it'd be great if you had like a place to take in groups of people. You know what I mean? I think that'd be huge. It'd be in the U.S. It'd be wonderful to. I don't know what I brought it up to you before, and we sort of chuckled a little bit, but I haven't really said anybody yet. But there are a number of people that could use a couple ceremonies for sure. You know what I mean?
And not even that. I mean, you know, there's I don't know if you've heard of darkroom technology. If you go into a completely darkened room after a couple of days, right? you can't let any light in and no sound, and you're just in there, and there's assistants to help you with the restroom and to eat and drink and all that. But you stay in the dark, and after a couple of days in a meditative state, you start to go into these altered states of consciousness. Your brain starts actually producing the DMT, so you actually can get into these altered states of consciousness and do that healing work on your own without anything. It's all purely natural and endogenous into you.
Hmm.
So that's really some stuff I really want to experiment with.
Well, there was the guy.
Healing too. We can do some detoxification, some purification with the herbs, the cold plunges, the saunas, just getting out in the sun, getting a lot of sunshine on the body, just so
Yep.
super healing. So it can be a healing center too.
Yeah, no,
There's
I'm
a
I'm
lot that we can do out there.
I'm big into the heat therapy. I mean, I didn't even know that 20 minutes in the sauna was that beneficial for your body. I used to sit in the sauna just because it made me feel good. I'd go with my buddy Robert Apple to the LA Athletic Club all the time. We'd sit in the sauna or go with Wilson, those guys to Vince's gym. That was like, we just sit in the sauna and not really think anything of it. But now it's 20 minutes. I look at the clock. I sit there for 20 minutes. I do 3 minutes in the cold plunge. It's like but I mean, what's interesting is to your point of being able to bring on this your stuff. There's holotropic breathing.
That's
There's
right.
there's
That's
some
right.
really wild stuff, that you can do when they went over to Peru with the Michelle Rodriguez movie about ayahuasca. That really, I forget what that's called. Deepak Chopra's in it. It's a really great. I've watched a bunch. What's that?
I thought it was pretty good.
It's called The Truth or something, or the something about the truth. Anyway,
Yeah.
uh,
And she's kind of a city person, so she brought that kind of urban crowd to the idea,
well, she
which is
was
good.
definitely kind of like, she had some things going on, but one thing that Zappy, the guy that sold beer.com, the one that produced the documentary, and helped the friend get to that build Rhythmia, that
Right.
where it all started. Um, he talks about, they said, "Will you ever go back and do ayahuasca again?" He says, "Well, I'm able to obtain the same consciousness and the same moments in breath." He goes, "Until I stop doing that, or if I feel a need to go back and do ayahuasca, I will." But I thought that was fascinating that he could breathe a certain way and have that, and I think holotropic breathing, if you read about it, you have to have somebody with you when you do it, because it's almost like if you do it right, you can have you could have out of body experiences.
Oh yeah, no, I've done it. Used to go down to Santa Monica over there on Montana. Was it Montana over there, North Santa Monica, kind of Bel Air there, and they would have a sound bath and holotropic breath work at the same time, where they would hit you with the gongs and those crystal bowls
Wow.
and the chimes, and you would do
When did you
the
do that?
what's that?
When did you do that?
That was probably about, I don't know, 5, 7 years ago, something like
Really?
that. Yeah, it was great. And I bring people down there, and I remember I brought a friend down, and she had a really out of body experience. She was crying and really got
Wow.
hit with a whole emotional download.
Well, you know what Joe Rogan
It
talks about
scared her, and she wasn't into any kind of plant medicines, and she got scared of that. So it can be very powerful.
but she didn't do a psychedelic. This was just
Oh,
done
this is
by.
the network and the sound bath.
So is that very much like a hyperbolic chamber where you're laying in, like almost like you're in like a saline solution, and you're
Oh no, this was in a yoga studio.
yeah, that I would.
And you lay down and you just they teach you how to do the breath work, and you put these
Is it like
blind.
Kundalini?
Well, the Kundalini is an energy that's trapped, and it can be unleashed. It's in the base of your spine.
Yeah.
You can release it with the breath work and Kundalini yoga. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then it can, yeah, I mean it's serious stuff. I mean, some people have had spontaneous Kundalini awakenings and they don't know what to do with themselves. It's crazy because I'll tell you a story. So I was I was at a weed store, And I don't smoke weed. I mean, hardly ever. But I wanted to get some weed, and I never bought it, and I just wanted to do the experience, right? So you walk in, and then you got to show them your ID, and then they press a button and the door opens so you can go in. So I guess in case they get some robber trying to,
Yeah, yeah, they have to, it's all cash.
yeah, so you press the button, I go walking in. So I'm looking at the display cases, and here's a young girl, couldn't have been more than 25, looked like a USC type of kid, right? And I go, listen, I've never bought weed. I don't even know the name of this stuff. I just want something that's relaxing, okay? I don't want something that's gonna keep me up. I was looking for something just to relax with, right?
Yeah,
So she goes, well, what about this one here? I go, well, is it like mellow? Is it help me relax? Because I want to use it for meditation. And she goes, well, what kind of meditation are you doing? And I go, well, I don't really know much about it, but I like to have altered states of consciousness. So we got to talking about ayahuasca somehow, and I said, yeah, I have a lot of experience with that. She goes, oh my gosh, tell me about it. I want to do it. I have to do it. And she was really, really picking my brain about it. And I turned to her and I said, listen, I said, I don't recommend it for you. And she goes, why? I said, because you're young, okay? You're probably having the time of your life. You probably have a ton of friends. You're probably going out on the weekends and going to the clubs and going to concerts and festivals and all those great things. And you probably have ambitions for a career and this and that. She said, yeah, 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 yeah. I said, this has the potential of destroying your worldview completely, where you will not see the world in the same way anymore. And a lot of the friends that you have and a lot of the things that you do will no longer be interesting to you. I said, I am so happy that I had, 30, 40 years of
crazy.
no, just believing in my worldview.
Sure.
And I had a great time. We talk about all the time, John, how much fun we had with our friends and going out and surfing and going to the mountains, and we just had a great time. All in all, it was a fantastic time. We actually grew up in Southern California during the prime of its life too.
100%.
But I'm happy that I had that. And then when like you witnessed, I went through the divorce and lost a lot financially and this and that, and had to kind of come to a crossroad. And I looked at myself, I go, and I didn't know about this other spiritual life. And I said, do I really want to go this way? I could rebuild, but do I really want to rebuild in this manner? And I said, no, I want something else. I was searching, right, for something else. But I told this young woman, I said, unless you're ready to have your whole worldview blown apart, don't do it. Wait till you're 40 or 50, please.
Sure. Yeah.
That's my advice to her.
What did she say? Of
She just smiled. She's going to do what she's going to do. But
course.
so, anyways, that's you know, that's the problem. That's the problem.
Dogs are going out. I'm just looking at the dogs leaving.
Okay.
Well, yeah, no, the whole when you bring up something which is interesting, whether it was Bitcoin told us wanted to buy Bitcoin, I think it was at 30. We lived back then. We should listen to you. It's one of those things where, and when you were talking about ayahuasca, then this is somehow now trailing into the things that are helping people. Mark, you've always been kind of, I really admire your foresight in seeing the future, which is kind of mind blowing in a way, because I'll tell my wife sometimes, she go, oh, what's Mark Tard talking about? She loves you to death, but it's always like, pretty wild stuff, right? So I try to explain it. But what's interesting is if you follow the through line of when you really started, it was way back when with ayahuasca. Now the application for it, if people really, I think the information that you gave that girl, just like the information that people need to know how powerful it is and how it could impact your life. Like, for example, I always told my wife I'm not interested in doing it, but what I'd be interested in doing is you and I, if it ever came to a point, God forbid, that I was going to leave this earth, or I knew that I had a measure of time, right? So, like, let's say 6 months or whatever, you and I'd be hanging out at the church, right? So, I definitely want to, have that perspective because what I understand is it opens your mind to the life after death or that experience isn't so fearful. It isn't, and then you live in this. My understanding of it is you would live in this non-stress free worried about that you'd be okay with and then when you're not stressed you actually live longer, am I right?
Yeah, but picture this. Okay, do you ever see the Truman Show?
Yeah.
Okay, so Truman Show is kind of a metaphor. Leads his whole life, and it's all a big put on, right? He's
Mhm.
actually the center of a movie, and everybody else around him are kind of acting in the movie. They're not real. They're not really. They're playing characters, right? So he has this awakening, and he realizes it's all a game and a show, and he wants out, right? Because he found true love. His heart got touched by that woman and he wants to be with her. That was the only real thing that he ever experienced. Okay. So what happens when you have a true spiritual breakthrough is that you kind of have that feeling. You're not as stressed out because you don't take the world so seriously because this isn't the only game in town, right? And you start to see, and John, you're already there. I mean, I talk to you all the time. You already see the bullshit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't believe everything that comes over the TV anymore, do you?
No. I,
Right. So,
and
so
I'll go one step further. I would say that, and I say this out loud, 50%, if not more, that we've been told growing up is all bullshit. We've been
right. So you have actually pierced the matrix without any psychedelics. You're already there. Okay. And that's just part of what's happening right now in the world. The lies are being exposed like crazy.
Yeah.
Well, now it's becoming mainstream, the whole JFK thing, and people have been questioning 9/11 for God knows how long. Uh, People questioned, the moon landings, if those were a put on. I mean, everything's in question now. But this is the expansion of the consciousness of the people as a collective. But there's still a lot of people that are asleep. That's the problem. But
No,
do we relate to them as much as we used to? No. Do we take them seriously? Not really.
Well, what I
We
said to you on the phone, what I said to you on the phone today, look, I respect everybody's opinion. But what I don't respect is an intelligent person I know that I've grown up with. I respect your opinion, but don't recite exactly what you've watched on TV without having any kind of like understanding or the other side. I'll watch CNN. I'll watch MS. My political beliefs will go across the board. I'll look at it all and then come to my conclusion. So like maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I remember this vividly. The cable company Comcast was charging us, or for whatever, or Comcast. It started $110, and the next bill, like all of a sudden, it's $300. I'm like, why is it $300? And they couldn't give us an answer, and they wouldn't bring it down. So I said, fine. So I literally grabbed all cable boxes, cut all the cables and everything out of here, and I went to the smart TVs. And what was interesting was I kind of like got the apps and I was watching, a little bit of Fox News or whatever, which was like, nah, no. But then I got to YouTube, which is interesting. And YouTube, I never really took it seriously. But what's interesting about YouTube curates what you're interested in. It goes from it'll show me Graham Hancock stuff, and then it'll go to Davari Dawkins that gives me like a breakdown, 18 minutes of like the highlight stories of what's going on. But it gives me perspective of multi events happening at one time in short little moments. Or I go extended versions where I watch Joe Rogan in an extended conversation with Rick Perry about ibogaine, where that was like, poof. I remember being in the sauna and there was a guy wearing this weird hat on his head. And I knew instantly he was a Rogan follower because Rogan talked about these hats you can wear in the sauna that keeps your head cool so you could be in the sauna longer, right? So because Rogan does it like at stupid temperatures. But I believe it's like this. If you took, and what most people don't see, and if they're listening and they think we're full of shit, take this into consideration. For all our lives, we had Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather, Joseph Bentley when we were living in LA, And when they would tell us things, we believed it. But
Oh, the gospel.
right, so
That's
the
what
web,
happens.
so it's easy to weaponize that message. So what's happening? It's almost like a political, sadly, one side pushing, which is like it's always disturbing when if you go both sides, then okay, you're giving both arguments, then it's like how can you dispute that? But let's imagine like our lives has been a pot of stew. The lid was on tight, and they were being told the 50% of shit that we didn't want to know that we were told to believe, and we really didn't know because the lid was on tight, right? Well, I believe that in the last like year or so, that lid's been blown off. And from the podcast, you're seeing this last election, the information's out. You can't suppress things the way you used to. That it's there are still secrets, but they're working hard to try and expose them. You know what I mean?
Oh,
It's
yeah, yeah. I mean, you listen to Joe Rogan, he talks about all kinds. He talks about psychedelics. He talks about all these so-called conspiracy theories that a lot of them are becoming, fact.
it's like
He's been doing this for years. Russell Brand is out there. Who are some of the other big podcasters?
well,
Just
the difference. So when they get on Rogan, Rogan's number one. I think Tucker Carlson, Rogan are right. Like, but Tucker is more. You could categorize Tucker as more political to the right, right? So he's more of a conservative, whereas Rogan at one point was a Bernie voter, a self-described independent, but then as he had Trump on the show for those 3 hours, he converted over to see why was I being told to hate this man? For 3 hours, he talked to me intellectually about topics and things that I did not know that he knew that. You know what I mean? Right off the top of his head, he was late to another meeting he had to go to because he wanted to spend time on that show. And I do believe that was a big part of people getting to know who Donald Trump was. And again, Donald Trump's a metaphor, like you say. It's like, again, you could be told something, whether you're world famous or not, or you're doing this, you're doing that, and if people believe it. I think going back to what I was saying was, I have no time in my life for now. I look at it's not because I don't like your political stance or what you're saying to me. You don't have the receipts or the other side of it to able to articulate and have a conversation. It's always usually blasting in my face, or I don't know what I'm doing. And I've let friends go tell me that they're far more intelligent than I am. And to me, that's if you're a friend of mine and you've been a friend of mine, I have a good friend that's got the same sobriety as me, this guy was great, and he's on the other side, and I'm okay with that. But he would just talk down to me. He would talk down to me, and as I was not intelligent enough to understand what was really going on. And to me, I find no. Why would I want to be on the attack at 60 plus years old with a friend who I'm supposed to have this great conversation with? I mean, you and I talk, we have exchange of ideas. Do I agree with everything you say? Most of the time, but there are some things I don't. Do you agree with everything I say? Probably most of the time, but probably not. But we still talk to each other, right? And we have friends that that we talk to, and it's very difficult to do that, right? So it's
Oh, I mean, I can see the program. I can see the programming. I already know what they're going to say because I see the program that they're under.
right.
And we all, no matter how, you know, aware we are, we're all part of some kind of a program. I'm still peeling back those layers, but there's some people that are deeply, deeply programmed, and they're just, we call them NPCs, right? Non-player characters. They don't have an original thought. They're just spewing the party, the mainstream line, so to speak.
It goes to what I
Take the
said.
vaccine, it's safe and effective. I mean,
Oh, yo, boy.
they're
Yeah,
still spewing that, even though
that was a
the
full court press, wasn't it?
amount of evidence how dangerous that thing was and how, completely experimental drug they got people to willingly inject in their bodies because they were under mind control. So, anyways, that's the problem with when you start to get into the expansion of consciousness through psychedelics or breath work or whatever, meditation, all these things, is that you start to the worldview that has been programmed into you for all these years starts to dissolve,
Well,
and you
this
got a place to go. I
so with
mean, are
this,
you going to be a very lonely person?
would you say that probably psychedelics were taken out of the equation and marijuana was, I mean, not to be, I believe the expansion of mind and giving that kind of different look is not something the government want us to have. I think for many reasons, this was taken out of the equation, and all the research and all the, all this great research being done now with DMT. I mean, they're talking about DMT, which is, this is the mind blower. Okay. To me, I find this fascinating. Do I want to do DMT? No. But do I find this fucking fascinating? Yes. DMT is, it, if you did DMT and I did DMT, we're going to see the same entities. Now, you were raised differently, even though we're good friends and different experiences, but why do you see the same entities that I do? So our hallucinogens are like 15 minutes under that. What they're seeing is like there's some kind of, there was a communication process between that pineal gland and that whole, where these phones aren't the way we communicated thousands of years ago, possibly. DMT and psychedelics, these, I find that fascinating. I believe it. I don't disbelieve it. I watch, because there's an experiment in San Diego that's being funded by millions of dollars where they're doing a drip now for 2 hours of extended DMT, where they're looking closely at these different entities that are there. What are they, and what are they trying to tell these people? I mean, when you did DMT, did you see that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I did a thing called 5-MeO DMT, which is
Hmm.
the one off the frog,
Yep.
uh, which is the most powerful,
Yep.
and that's a whole conversation. Um, yeah, I went to that. I only did it once. That was 5 years ago, and I'm still processing it. That's how powerful that one was.
Well, the
But
guy, listen, the
that
guy.
was crazy. And but let me finish because I know, one of the things you could do quickly realize in a breakthrough psychedelic experiences is that you do go to other dimensions where there are beings there, and depending on you and what your makeup is, you can channel those beings. They will actually speak through you, they'll move through you, everything. Other people will interact with them on a visual basis, but other people will actually incorporate those beings in, and they're very well known in Brazil is a very spiritual place, by the way. It's got the Amazon rainforest with all kinds of indigenous people that are actually the first people to do the ayahuasca and the yages and these powerful psychedelics, and they actually have names in groups of these entities, and they're actually part of their whole spiritual makeup there. So they're very well known. It's in America where we don't really understand it. I'll give you an example too. So in one of the religions in Brazil, it's called Umbanda, right?
Mhm.
It's a came over from Africa. It's an Afro-Brazilian religion, and it's part of our church. It's integrated into our church a bit, so I know something about it. And we actually do ceremonies to call in some of the beings, and there are what are called mediums. Okay, and mediums are people that will actually physically incorporate the beings. So there's one particular being that comes in, and it's called a pretaveo, and it's an old person, and an old man, and he likes to drink what's called cachaça, which is a rum drink, and likes to smoke cigars. So a woman, there's actually a video on YouTube of a 300-pound woman that incorporates this Preto Velho. They sit her down on a chair, on a stool. They hand her a glass of cachaça and a cigar, and she's sitting there drinking and laughing and dancing along and smoking the cigar. And then after 10 minutes, that particular drumming stops and everything. She gets back up and she's back to being herself.
Wow.
And that woman may not even have been a drinker, but she was craving that drink and that smoke in that moment because that's what the Preta Veil wants. And this is all part of it's normal in Brazil. Normal in Brazil.
I
That, that,
just,
that spiritual beings are part of that culture.
I just think that, the people watching this, or even myself thinking about it, is you have to open your lenses. The lenses are so closed. They've closed us down. And what's interesting about what you talk about, so one of the cool things I keep hearing over and over again from different podcasts and different, from Actually, Graham Hancock is probably the most, he says it the most, is there are, in a nutshell, there are civilizations that have been around for thousands of years that talk about after we leave this earth, our energy, right? So, but they all have the same story. It's almost like, again, it's, you would think that, on one side of the world there's this story, and then over here this is this story, but they're all common stories. They're all the similar of the same content, similar to the glyphs on the walls. How do the glyphs on the walls end up in Mexico, but then also the same glyphs are on the walls in Indonesia? What was going on? I mean, there was no email, no texting, no fax machines, right? So I look at it as, to me, I'll sit out here and I'll have a cigar or whatever and watch, depending on how deep I want to go. I remember when I first was telling you, like my mind was just sitting here, just like, really? I try to explain to my wife, I'm like, oh my God, you won't believe what I just watched. And she's sweet and she'll listen to me, but the words come out. I'm so excited, the words come out jumbled. But when you see this evidence, just undisputable, like things that they put together. I mean, and one thing about Rogan's great because he's curious. I love Rogan because he doesn't really, like, going back to what I was saying before. He'll bring a lot of people on. He'll ask a lot of curious questions. I don't think he really takes a particular stand. He'll call bullshit, but even some of this stuff, he was fascinating with, he blew his mind with, like, where do you go after this life? That's always the big question. Like, do we leave this life, this energy? I watched my father, when my father died, I watched his soul leave him, and like his whole body just compressed down. I was like, where'd that go? Where did the energy go? That was it. So I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where we're going to find out for sure sooner than later, right? But I mean, it is
Yeah, you
fascinating.
get a little preview, if you if you're in the right space, you can get previews into all that. I mean, yeah, after my DMT experience, the 5-MeO, I have no fear of death.
Mhm.
Actually go through a complete death, really.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I'll just give you the 2-minute version. So, um, you very small amount of this powder is put in this. They call it the magic lantern, and the facilitator said, "Yeah, just go ahead and suck in this smoke and then lay your head back." Before my head even hit the pillow, I was like launched. I mean, completely launched, and I was up against this gigantic ball of energy that was like all the force of the universe. And there was like a little pause, and boom, I'm in the middle of this thing. And the only thing I can say is that it was like being in the eye of a hurricane. Everything was going on in the whole entire universe, but nothing was going on. It was the strangest feeling.
Wow.
Then I remember thinking, I know this place. How could I ever forget this place? Right? It was so familiar, strangely familiar. And then um, I got this, I got this thought, but you're not really you. You're kind of like, picture like you're the eternal you.
Mm,
You are the big you, the one you. Like we're all this. You're in the universal mind. It's so hard to explain. It's not even meant for words. But anyway, so there's a pause there, and I remember thinking, being in this space, going, "This is not it, though. This is not. This is very lonely." Okay, it's all about relationships. It's all the whole reason for life is loving relationships.
mm,
That was the big download I got.
mm,
Keep that message because there's all these Buddhist sects like the Advaita Vedanta, and they say, yeah, you want to get to the one, the oneness. The Advaita, is the one, but that's not where it's at. It is duality where it's at, but when you're in loving relationships and you're able to experience this thing as separated from the whole, that's really the ultimate. But and that there's much higher planes. So I'm out there. They call it the Dharmakaya, they call it the Purusha. There's many words for where I was. It's as far as out as you can go. Okay. And the 49th Bardo. And then what happens is you or I or the one starts to come back down through the different dimensions. And I would make stops at the different dimensions. But this is a whole conversation. But it
Wow.
was mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. So, the question is, where do you go? How can you fear death after that?
Well, how do you know? I was told that if you didn't believe in God, you do now after a
Oh,
DMT.
totally. Oh, totally. Yeah, and you understand that we're a piece of that. We're a fractal of that eternal energy and that eternal consciousness and bliss. All the things that I was hearing from the great teachers, about the eternal bliss and all that were experienced, so it really relieved me of a lot of fears. Like, there's no way there's no way that you're just nothingness.
Where did you what were you doing when you just decided I'm gonna go do DMT? What led you to that moment where you ended up going and doing the frog?
Well, I had a girlfriend, and she was a Tibetan. um she was she was a Tibetan Buddhist, and she was not into psychedelics, but she said that there's a talk up in Santa Barbara. This shaman is coming to town, and if you want to go listen about 5-MeO DMT, the most powerful psychedelic there is, I said, okay, I'll go with you up there. So I'm listening to the guys talk. There's all these kind of Santa Barbara sophistos up there, right? And he's explaining a lot of what ayahuasca trips were.
Yeah.
So I raised my hand and I said, this all sounds really great, but I'm experiencing the same kinds of things with Santo Daime, and ayahuasca, which is DMT also. And he said, well, tell me about some of your experiences, Mark. And I go, okay, well, I did this and I saw that, and I sat before this crystal palace, and blah blah blah. And he goes, you keep saying I did this, I did this. With 5-MeO, there is no I. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, I can't tell you that. You have to experience that.
Really?
I said, okay, I'm in. I'm in. So I understood it. I understood the I. There's still the I, but the I is the one. You get to the one I, that eternal singular consciousness.
Hmm.
And then you step back from that. So you get to that place, you experience it, you see it, you know it. Like I said, I was in that space and I said, I know this place. How could I ever forget it? So yeah, that was just so, I'm still processing. I don't need to go back.
That night you did it.
Yeah, that's the last time I did it. I just did it
So,
one
so
time.
he was giving a speech, and basically, how many other people did it when you did it?
Oh, no, 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 no. No, it was like a week later. He was
Okay.
trying to getting people recruited to go do it.
Oh, so you went back with him.
Yeah, we did it at actually it was a huge place down in Point Doom in Malibu that uh, Steve Jobs' wife ended up buying, and it's was a gigantic plateau down there in
Oh.
this small kind of guest house. It was a very, very powerful area. Well, you and I used to live out in Point Doom. There's a lot of spiritual energy out there.
Indian
And
Burial Ground.
Indian Burial Grounds, yeah, and I felt that out there, and I was scared, man. I didn't. I remember this woman was going before me. I said, I got to just go out and take a walk. I was really nervous, right? And I remember walking out to the bluff and going, I don't know if I want to do this. This is
And you got
crazy.
second thoughts.
Oh yeah, I was almost ready to run, and I go, what am I doing? And I was scared, and then I just go, I just remember saying I'm going, it's like going off a high dive. You can't look, right? You just got to walk out to the plank and jump, and that's what I did. Just go,
Wow.
amen, okay, I'm ready, let's go. I don't even pause.
Before your head even hit the pillow.
Yeah, it was crazy. About 50 minutes into that. It was wild. but I don't know, it's not for everybody.
No.
But it was a fantastic experience. I'm still, like I say, I'm still processing it. But yeah, there's just much more. I guess the real point is, and you know, there is much more to this world than we can even imagine.
Mm,
And there's much more to this life. I mean, if you just stop to think about the miracle of us just even having this conversation. I mean, it's unbelievable, right?
yeah.
Not to mention that you're way across the country in Florida. I'm here, and we're talking like we're next door.
Right.
And it's wild. But yeah, it's just I don't know, John. I'm really appreciative of. I'm in awe of the human experience.
It,
I really, really, really am.
it is. One second. Yes, Jack. You all right? What? Oh, it's unlocked. Okay, drive safe. Bye. Whenever the 17-year-old calls, I got to answer it.
Yeah, yeah. You worry about it.
So yeah, listen, here's the thing. So I look at it this way to everybody out there in TV land, I was this creature of the night. I lived a very fast and wild existence, you know what I mean, you would say. And we were in the prime of Los Angeles of its time. Motley Crue hadn't really made it yet. Blondie was still coming around. I mean, it was like a really cool time. So to come from that to have a family of three, my oldest Chloe's getting married. She's 28. Um, Jack's 17. He's got a great job. Emma's going to go to college. I mean, I've got the most amazing wife who loves me. And what's so cool about that is that they always say that you become who you want to attract, right? So like you change into, I guess, the person that you would love to, you be with, right? So of course there was some moments where, there was some suitors there, but when I ran into Stephanie, it was just kind of like, whoa, okay. I think you remember that. So it was like, okay,
Yeah,
um, and stop me in my tracks. It was interesting. And what's funny about her, it's not funny actually, but she's never done a drug ever. And she drinking for her doesn't make her feel good, so she doesn't do it. What a concept, right? So it's like, okay. And I'm always like, hey, I'm the driver when everybody's messed up, and I've been perfectly fine being around, my business when I was on the internet, for 10 years. We were traveling all over the world with some very wealthy guys, and they were always partaking in, partying. And years later, they couldn't believe that I was sober, that I was there at 4 a.m. playing poker, smoking cigars, whatever. They thought I was drinking or doing some drugs or something, but I managed to be able to grasp the comfort of being okay with who I am today, and being okay with, like, it doesn't alcohol and drugs is kind of a funny thing. I look at it is it's like it seems so long ago in another life. But again, it's scary because on the other side, which keeps me in check, is if it's that easy to be away from, is it that easy to start up again? I don't really think I'm ever going to end up where I was, although I don't ever want to even like take that thought process. It's never come to my mind that taking a line of blow or drinking a glass of vodka would be like a solution to what my problems are going on right now. I have a really good life, and I don't want to screw it up. And I try to do the best I can. And to your point, we're enlightened now. I think we see things, and I don't know if it's because you're older now. I think it's because we're older, but I sit in the sauna at Lifetime there at my gym, and I'll be honest with you, there are some young guys in there who really kind of get it, and I'll share some of this. I'll share some of the pearls of like different things that I've gone through, and they're just like, wow, there was a 20-something-year-old couple guys, and they were talking about, like, drinking doesn't they don't like drinking anymore. It's so dumb. I'm like, wow, it's like, okay, well, it kind of is, but it's the pressure that you're put under to do it. I mean, we drank ourselves silly, you know what I mean? It was 151 Bacardi, and Chris and all the guys, we found the underage liquor stores when we were growing up. But I think the drinking really got into effect with when the cocaine happened. But anyway, I'm glad we like made it out of the 80s, because I think a lot of people did not.
I think that the young people saw a lot of the mistakes. There's still a lot of partying going on, don't get me wrong, but there's
Yeah.
a whole bunch of young people that are just so awake now.
Yeah.
Way more than when we were that young. It's actually really refreshing.
Well, there's information out there. People like
There is
myself, people
information.
like you. Yeah.
Like I say, the veil's thinning. People are calling out the bullshit, and they're not under such mind control.
Right.
And I think the internet and podcasting and all that has really helped expand that. And this podcast here we're doing, maybe a few people will get some tidbits out of this. Like, yeah, hey, I get it.
Well, what's great is like I think when
Guys are
Rogan.
OGs, man. They went through the whole process, really.
Well, I'm getting I always get everything I need when I'm talking to you, Mark. It's always a great experience. I always enjoy it. On our phone calls, we like today or yesterday, I want to stop talking because we were like rolling into it. We rolled into the subject. I
Might as
want to
well record it, right?
I wanted to get into some politics, but I don't think we have time to do that. I think we've been on for
I'll
a
do another podcast on that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, but to those out there, you really, if I could say anything in the most kindest way possible, would be it's sourcing. It's like Cat Williams. Cat Williams is this great comedian, right? If you don't know who he is, I mean, if you watched his show, it's like, okay, this guy's a goof. But if you watch him on Joe Rogan, he's one of the most articulate. I've I've never seen anybody like this guy. It's amazing. And he always says the information is out there. You just have
Yeah.
to look for it. So it's like
Yeah.
it's like running that marathon. It's almost like you got to want to run 26. You got to like I sent over my wife got mad at me because I sent over um a podcast to my mother-in-law who's the staunch Democrat, which is like okay, but she's like, she talks, we don't argue, whatever, but I sent it over to say, hey, listen, I need you to look at this, take a look at it. And here's another perspective. Give me your notes on it when you're done watching it. My wife did not want me to send over. She's like, just let her be in her echo chamber in her space. But I feel like enlightenment is such a great thing. It happens to me if I could somehow, but I guess if some people are ready and some people aren't, you know what I mean? So be it.
Well, they say one of the worst things you do is wake up somebody who's sleepwalking. They can get very angry. So,
Right.
we look. I'm there. I'm not the end all of anything, but if people come to me and want my perspective, I love talking about it. I'm there to give my tidbits of wisdom, and I've been around a long time. We've been on this earth a long time, John. We've had a lot of chapters, and a lot of experience. So, but if they're not ready, they're not ready. I mean, you know, it, I really believe that I believe in God's grace. I think God can actually touch you with certain things when you're ready and when He's ready to give it to you.
Yeah.
And who are we to intervene in that? And everybody's been given divine free will from God, right? We can make mistakes. We're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to experience our follies and our triumphs, So who are we to force our worldview on people? I wouldn't have listened. I would have thought, who is this old man? Let me go back to
Right,
my
right.
golf games and my beer and my Doritos, because that's the phase I was in. It was a lower consciousness thing, but I was having a ball.
Of course. We didn't know. But
Right.
let's go back to those Oasis meetings. So there'd be guys coming in on, buses from rehab. Florida's a big rehab place, right? So and 90% of the time over the last 36 years, going to meetings wherever it is, in whatever part of the world, it's always the same answer. It's like I don't really believe in God, or I don't know if God's going to help me or whatever. It's just one of those things. I always say that, religion and spirituality, you have like religion are for those who don't want to go to hell, right? And spirituality is for those who've been hell and don't want to go back. So it's like you have to almost be a spiritual person and believe in something bigger than yourself, whether it's the ocean or something out,
Surrender to ego.
right? Something away from what controls your monkey mind. You know what I mean? So And and people are able to do that. That's spiritual awakening. But there are some people that are still in trouble with it, and that's what I think my good friend, when I sent him over to he may have been a person to do ibogaine. I think in retrospect, ibogaine would have been probably like a, he would have never had a relapse. And in fact, I had my friend watch it, because I said if he ever goes back, the relapses, this is where you need to send him, like immediately to Texas, to those guys. You know what I mean? So, um, yeah, because I mean that's my best advice. I cannot. I'm not going to sit there and try to force the square peg in a round hole. You'll see people that they don't get it. It's like it's what's hard for me to go to a meeting sometimes. I mean, even though it's like I'm a grinder and I'll push, push, push. And we were, there were a lot of great project people we were good friends with. We tried helping along the way, and they just didn't want to ever move off their regular. Just some people like that. So I feel like it's hard sometimes. I get out of the meetings more hearing and being grateful, but it's hard to move the needle with some of these people at the meetings. I mean, being there is good, and there's been a couple instances where I've actually spread the message. Gary Dubin, the actor, was a very big part of me in Studio 12. Walked down the driveway on January 17th. I'll never forget this. The meetings were 90 minutes. So they were like front part of the meeting, and then you have a smoke break, and then you have the speaker. So I walk in, I'm like, I don't hear anything, man. I'm just kind of like, I'm in like a fog. I've been up for a couple of days. I remember like leaving a house with Woody and this girl Samantha, and there was like below on the table, a warm Heineken, and I go, "This is the last time you're going to see John Dunn high." And they laughed.
Well,
So that night, I ended up leaving and going to Studio 12. So I was still kind of like, groggy a little bit. So fast back up a little bit a year before at the gym, I was in that pink cloud from 86 to 89 trying to get sober, but like there was a moment where I had sober, I had like 6 months or something. And Gary Dubin, the actor, was struggling with alcohol. And he says, "John, you look great. What are you doing?" And I told him, "Man, you got to get sober. Go to Studio 12. It's this fantastic place right over here." So I went out like the next week and got loaded again. And I guess a year had gone by without, and then I get to this meeting and I go to the front part of the meeting and I'm sitting there and I don't really hear anything. I don't really recognize anybody, and I'm walking literally back down the driveway. I'm like getting ready to leave, right? So I'm like, okay. And I hear, "John, John." And I look around, it's Gary. And I go, "Gary, what are you doing?" He goes, "John, where are you going?" I go, I'm I'm coming over here to say hello to you." He goes, "No, you were leaving." I go, "No, I wasn't going to leave. I wasn't sure." He goes, "John, you have to stay because I'm taking a year cake. I want you to give me my year cake." I'm like, fuck, I have
wow.
to, I have to stay now, right? But it was weird. Something happened in that moment because the second part of the meeting, I found myself laughing and connecting with like humility, like almost like I could laugh at myself and identify with some of these fucked up people that were like just like me, having these crazy experiences, and they could laugh at themselves. It was like I could feel the laughter. It like wrapped around me like a warm blanket. And after that, I was just hooked. That was it. That was my new thing. It was like twice a day, the first 5 years. I went there and stuck. It was a magical place. A lot of those people that were in those rooms are still very good friends of mine. Candy Finnegan is she's still on intervention. Mike Finnegan's her husband. He played with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. They took me in a car with David Crosby and those guys. They used to take me on Wednesdays. David Crosby, Bob Cleveland, Mike Finnegan, Greg Russell sometimes, and I forget who else used to go. We'd go over the hill to the Apple Pan, get something to eat, and then go to the Roxbury Men's Stag. You'd have to dress up. Like I'd wear like a jacket because it was like a traditional men's stag meeting. And it was intense because you're going over the hill and you're having this talk in the car. When you're at the Apple Pan, you're having the talk at the Apple Pan, this camaraderie and this sort of, commonality. And then you go to this meeting where it's traditional and there are a lot of like, dude, I'm not gonna give away people's identity, but like there were big, big people. I'll say Anthony Hopkins because he identifies, but Anthony Hopkins. There was like Mel Gibson was there. There was so many people, thousands of people at this place, and so yeah, no, that was interesting. I don't even know where I was going with that, but I just think
Well,
that
you replaced your relationships with the addicts with the sober people.
right,
That you actually speaking of relationships, you got new relationships of a higher level.
Yeah,
In
different.
Great. That's great. Yeah. And that's what saved you. And you surrendered your ego, John. This is the thing. People say, well, who are the people that have the hardest times with ayahuasca? I've always said it's the people that have really strong egos.
Well, ego is
They
what's
will not surrender to a higher power.
ego's
You
not your
cannot fight.
amigo.
Ego's not your amigo. You cannot fight it. You just have to surrender. When
So
you
hard. It's so hard, but it's sort of the balancer of all the shit, isn't it? I mean, it's like you have all this shit crammed in your head. Ego's the balancer to keep you, I guess, in check, I guess. Most people think that. I used to think that, but it's almost like,
Well, I look at it as like the monitors. It's looking around for danger.
oh, hold on a second, Mark. Yes, Jack. Yeah, that sounds good. I'm on a podcast with Mark right now. I'll see you when you get here. I love you. Okay, bye. The 17-year-old again. I have to answer it. You know that. I'm sorry.
And that's fine.
Sorry.
It's 8:56, so let's wrap this baby up in 5 minutes or so. But
Yeah, man.
um,
I'm up for
anyway,
that. I mean, we could talk, like you and I could probably talk till tomorrow.
yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
But
But
we'll stay, I want to get into some like I want to talk to you about I think some of the crypto and some of the other stuff we have the colloidal silver and some of the politics. And I think the politics is kind of an interesting thing because I mean we could talk about it. I don't think in a combative way. I think in sort of a helping way to, I think there's reasons why, a lot of people ask me, I'm from California, why am I conservative? Like, okay, well, I just look at it as common sense. I mean, there's a lot of different things there. But I don't. There's a lot of things I do not understand that people tell me that still can't explain it. So maybe there's a way we can kind of talk about it and like,
well, I think it. What I'd love to do a podcast on is what's been consuming my brain for the last couple of years. Really is as I've told you, is my quest to be free and to be uh back to living what they call living in the republic. This country was designed as a republic, okay, constitutional republic, not a democracy.
right,
And right now, we are without the Constitution. U.S. citizens are not protected by the Constitution right now, and I can explain all that. But there is a way where we can get back to that, and I want to start helping people do that because, um, right now, we're in some sort of an open air prison. Unless you can correct your what they call your status, you're really in an open air prison. And this is such an interesting thread that I've discovered, and it's really grown in popularity too. And I'll tell you, it will blow your mind on how this world really works.
okay.
Okay.
I'm ready to hear the whole thing. I want you to unravel the whole thing for us. We'll do the next one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it just in essence what they've done is they've created another John Dunn. Okay. So when you get pulled over by a cop, who are they pulling over?
Me,
Who's me?
John Dunn.
Who's John Dunn?
That's me.
Okay, so they're and so they say, "Give me your license, John Dunn," and you said, "Oh, I got it right here, officer." So you hand him your license. Who has the license?
It's my license, isn't it?
Okay. All right. So when you look at that license, it's John. What's your middle name again, John?
Lauren.
John Lauren Dunn in all capital letters, right?
Mhm.
It's guaranteed it's in all capital letters.
Yes.
So they're not allowed, the government has no control over John the man. They only have control over the legal entity, John.
Hmm.
Okay. So the legal entity, which is called your sole corporation, right? Or a sole proprietorship, was given to you at birth. Okay. And your certificate of live birth is evidence of that. And I can explain all this. So when the license is given to the legal entity named John Dunn,
Mhm.
okay, you're agreeing to be the responsible party for that legal entity, which is called the surety. Okay. So you're telling that officer that yeah, I'm responsible for this legal guy. Okay, here's the license. When you get a passport, that's not a passport for you, the man, that's a passport for you, the legal entity. Okay. The only way the governments have control over you is in a commercial capacity, which means that you have to have some sort of a legal fiction that they can operate with.
Hmm.
Okay. So here's the thing. You have to know who you are all the time, and you don't have to be the responsible party for the legal entity. You can resign that job. Okay. And what does that mean? That has a whole lot of great implications, a whole lot of freedoms, but you
Well,
have to know what to do.
that's tough stuff for people to wrap their minds around. You know what I mean? So, of
Oh, it really exposes just so much programming that we're under.
course, like I said, 50%, probably more.
So it goes really, really deep into the whole banking system, right? It goes deep into uh, they can never throw you in jail without your permission. Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
You have to give them permission to throw you in jail. You have to identify as that legal fiction, or else they have no jurisdiction over you. So it's a very this is a very spiritual thing, is knowing who you are, separating yourself as the living man, the son of God, the child of God,
Mhm.
and the legal fiction, and knowing how to use that to your advantage, but how to stay out of trouble by not identifying with it. So this is a whole big thing. This
Let's
is a mind blowing.
let's take it from A to Z on the next one because I think you need to lay it
That's
out.
you.
Right. I think you need to have all the information so I can grab it. If I can grab it, then I believe everybody else can.
I think it's going to have to be done in steps because the programming is so deep that it's so hard to reprogram your mind to think like that.
So do you
Because
think so? Here's a question for you. So do you think that you came to these conclusions and you sought this information by the clarity of what you've been doing with your ayahuasca and your would you ever have seen this or really have come across this, do you believe? As far as
I think that it is part of breaking free of the mind control. Yeah. It got interesting to me because I saw the fiction. I saw the methods of how they do it, how they control, how do a few people relatively control the masses. Okay.
I
That's a very big topic. Okay. And once you start to get insight into that, you become a lot freer of a person. Okay. So the way this country was designed was that we were under what was called the common law. So if I went ahead and I stole your bicycle, right? And there was a witness that saw me do it, right? And you swore that under the penalty of perjury that was your bike,
Mhm.
right? And that witness swore that yeah, I saw Mark take the bike. You could go to a court of law, right? A common law court. There's an injured party, there's a crime that's been committed, and I'd have to make restitution and pay my debt to society, right?
Mhm.
Because there was an injured party. Say I killed somebody, right? Or injured somebody. There's an injured party that will swear to that, or a witness will swear to that, right?
Right.
That's how it used to be. Now, there were people doing, 20, 30 years in prison for having marijuana.
Mm.
victimless crime, right? Because they broke a statute, which is not a law. They were tried in a administrative court. So there's been a lot of damage because then there's a million of these codes and statutes,
Right.
which the living man is not under. Only that fictional entity. So I don't want to get too much into it, but you see where this is going.
Of course.
There's a way to get out of all that.
Yeah.
There's a way that they can't prosecute you on a victimless crime.
Yeah.
And it sure would make you a lot freer of a person, wouldn't
I think so.
it?
I think
Is
so.
that something you'd like to know about?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think this is I'm getting to the point now where I really have a great understanding of it. I can simplify it down.
Well, I'd like you to explain it. I think, in our next one, we'll sit down and we'll just knock it out. I think that would be
It's a big, great topic.
okay.
And when you understand the banking system, it's going to blow your mind.
I'm
Blow.
very curious, Mark, because again, to what I said earlier, you're always on the sort of forefront of whether it's ayahuasca, Bitcoin, colloidal silver, mushrooms. I mean,
This
you
is a big one. This is a big one.
drum beats. I could feel the drum beats already.
This is a big one. This is how to get really free.
All right,
This
brother. I'm gonna say goodbye to you because you and
Hey, Kate, always a pleasure, man. Love you.
I love you too. You and I can keep talking all night. So hopefully people got something out of this. I did. I love talking to my buddy and like going down. I mean, there's a lot of stories you left out, but again, there's another day to talk about them. But there's a lot of there's great history. Like I said, like you said earlier, we grew up in California at the very best time. I think there was no secret. The music, the timing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's like an older thing when you say, things weren't as good as when we were growing up, but I gotta be, there's a serious argument to say that from the music to the way society was, the way prices were, everything, the way we lived, gone surfing on the weekends, how you live, how you and I like had the house in Malibu. I mean, what could beat that right
No, it
now?
was great. It was great, and they were great chapters.
Yeah.
But I have no desire to go back.
No,
Um, you know,
no,
on
no.
to new stuff, and it's all good. They're all chapters, and you close one chapter and go on to the next. It's all fantastic. And
Now we'll start off the next one about your watermelon finding in Point Doom, the ritual at the House of Little Doom there when
oh my gosh, yeah,
all right, buddy,
no,
I love you. We'll start off with
hi
that
man,
time. And
always a good time. Talk to you later.
see you, Marky.
Adios.
Bye bye.